Have you ever really thought about the true price of the things you buy? And I don't just mean what's on the price tag. I mean all the hidden costs, especially the ones that impact our planet. Well, today, we're going to break down the basics of economics and see how it all connects to the environment in a really clear way. So let's get right into it.
So, here's our game plan. We're going to start with the absolute basics, like what even is an economy? Then we'll look at how we measure if a country's economy is healthy, and just as important, what those numbers don't tell us. After that, we'll dig into the environment's hidden price tag, check out how we can actually make polluters pay for it, and then we'll wrap up with the key takeaways you'll definitely want to know.
All right, let's start at square one. What in the world is an economy? We're going to look at the fundamental ideas of buying and selling that pretty much shape everything around us.
Okay, so when you boil it all down, economics is simply the system we use to manage what we have, our resources. It's the whole process, right? From making stuff to getting it to people actually using it. You can almost think of it as society's operating system for how we interact with the planet.
Now, the engine that makes a market economy run is something called supply and demand. It's pretty simple, really. You've got sellers who want to sell things for as much as possible, and you've got buyers who want to buy for as little as possible. So they're kind of at odds, right? But eventually, they find a middle ground. That price they agree on, that's the market equilibrium price. It's that sweet spot where supply and demand finally shake hands.
Okay, so if that's how a single market works, how do we zoom out and see if a whole country's economy is doing well? We've got ways to measure it, but it brings up a really important question. Is a bigger economy automatically a better one?
You've probably heard of these two, GNP and GDP. GNP, that's gross national product, measures everything a country's companies produce no matter where in the world they do it. But GDP, gross domestic product, is a little different. It's more focused. It only counts what's made within a country's actual borders. That makes it a much better snapshot of what's happening economically inside that country.
So GDP is a really useful number for sure, but you have to ask yourself, does a huge GDP mean that everyone in that country is happy and healthy and living a great life? Does that one number really capture everything that makes life good?
Probably not, and that's exactly why other tools were created, like the Human Development Index. Instead of just looking at the money, this index gives us a much bigger picture of quality of life. It looks at things like how long people are expected to live and how many people can read. It's a much more, well, human-centered way to measure how a country is really doing.
And this leads us to a really, really important idea. Those big economic numbers like GDP, they often leave something huge out of the calculation. Let's talk about the costs that never actually make it onto the price tag.
Okay, picture this. A paper factory has its normal costs to make paper. Wood, electricity, paying its workers. Those are what we call its private costs. But what if that factory saves money by just dumping its chemical waste into a nearby river? Well, that damage to the river is a cost too, isn't it? But the factory isn't paying it. Society is. Nature is. That right there is an external cost.
So let's be super clear on that definition. External costs are those harmful side effects, whether they're social or environmental, that are not included in the price of a product. The company doesn't pay for them, you don't pay for them when you buy the product. They are, quite literally, a hidden cost.
So if you want to know the true cost of something, what economists call the social cost, it's a simple formula. You take the company's private cost, materials and labor, and you add that hidden external cost, like pollution and health problems. Only then do you see the full picture.
So why does this even happen? Well, a big part of the problem comes down to what we call public goods. I mean, think about it. Who owns the air? Who owns a whole river? Nobody, right? And because there's no single owner, there's no one to send a bill to when a company pollutes it. It becomes a free dumping ground. And that is exactly why governments need to step in, to act as the guardian of these shared resources for all of us.
So, if the free market isn't going to account for these hidden costs by itself, what do? How do we fix this? Well, let's look at a couple of clever ways we try to make those invisible costs visible and, well, make the polluters pay up.
Okay, one really direct way to do this is with a pollution tax. It works just like it sounds. The government says, hey factory, for every ton of gunk you dump in that river, you owe us X amount of money. All of a sudden, polluting isn't free anymore. That external cost is now part of the company's regular business expenses. That usually makes the final product a bit more expensive, which means people probably buy less of it, and there you have it, less pollution.
But a tax isn't the only tool in the toolbox.
There's another really interesting idea called tradable pollution permits. Now here, instead of setting a price on pollution, the government sets a hard limit, a cap, on the total amount of pollution allowed in a region. Then it gives out permits to companies. And here's the cool part. If one company gets really innovative and cleans up its process, it can sell its extra permits to another company. This creates a huge financial incentive to pollute less and get more efficient.
So how do governments decide how much pollution is too much? The goal isn't always zero pollution, because sometimes that's just not possible or it's ridiculously expensive. Instead, they use a tool called cost-benefit analysis. It's basically weighing the cost of cleaning things up against the benefits we all get, like cleaner air, better public health, to find that sweet spot, the most efficient level of reduction.
But you always have to remember, there's a limit to this. A government's budget isn't infinite. Every single dollar that's spent on, say, a super advanced water filtration plant is a dollar that can't be spent on schools, or police, or firefighters. So a cost-benefit analysis is really about making some tough choices and trying to find the right balance between a clean environment and all the other things a society needs.
All right, I know that was a lot to take in. So let's boil it all down to the absolute must-knows, the things you'll definitely want to have in your back pocket. Okay, here are the big four. First, market equilibrium price. Remember, that's just where supply meets demand. Second, GDP. That's the one that measures all the economic activity inside a country's borders. Third, and this is the big one for our talk today, external costs, those hidden social or environmental side effects. And finally, cost-benefit analysis, that process of weighing the pros and cons of pollution control.
And I want to leave you with one final thought to chew on. This cost-benefit analysis stuff is practical, for sure, but it also kind of puts us in a tricky spot. I mean, really, how do you put a dollar value on something like clean air or the beauty of a clear stream? That's the core challenge in all of this, and it's something worth thinking about long after you're done with this explainer.